Sitting with us today is Colleen Ryan. Colleen is the current co-chair of SEAT at the University of Tennessee, and she's going to talk about some of her experiences with us today. Thank you for joining us, Colleen.
Thanks, I'm glad to be here.
So Colleen, to begin, could you talk to us a little bit about why you got involved with SEAT in the first place?
So I got involved with SEAT my freshman year at UT. I was approached by one of the founding co-chairs who was in my scholarship program, the Haslam Scholars Program, and just talking with her about the work that SEAT was doing on campus, not only in regards to Sex Week, but about pushing conversations forward around sexual assault prevention, advocating that the university start including components of sexual assault prevention in orientation and Welcome Week. I saw that SEAT was doing a lot of great work that simultaneously I saw was really needed. It's certainly not infrequent to encounter friends, classmates, dorm mates who experience sexual assault. I was looking for ways to get involved and make a difference on campus, and I saw that SEAT was a great way to do that. It was already controversial, and so I joined about January of my freshman year. At that point in my freshman year, I was quickly coming to see that the University of Tennessee is not a great place for a lot of students. The Pride Center existed on campus, but campus itself was not a great place for LGBT students. At that point, it wasn't even so much administrative measures against LGBT students or state measures, but just that the vast majority of students at UT come from the state of Tennessee. When the Pride Center is the only space on campus where you're necessarily safe from slurs, physical acts of violence, and when that space is constantly being vandalized, urinated on, things being torn up and slashed down. I do firmly believe, especially now in 2016, that it's the minority of students on campus who actually hold violent, antagonistic feelings towards LGBT students, but they are a very vocal minority on campus. Twice in the last month, pride flags that were placed as a result of the Pulse shootings that took place earlier this summer. The Pride Center had placed a number of flags out as a remembrance of that, and several of them have been torn down. Additionally, several students have been physically assaulted in the fort or on Cumberland in the last month, so it's been, I think as a result of the defunding of the Office for Diversity and Inclusion, it's been a particularly hard month or so for the LGBT community here. You know, it's a battle that's still ongoing and on campuses across the country, but here at Tennessee we have a number of unique barriers, being the history of our state legislature and getting involved in university student affairs to the extent that they do. Most of the hostility that I have experienced directly since being involved in SEAT, and especially since becoming a co-chair, has been from the state legislature. It has been the numerous attempts by the state to call out the work that we've done, to stop the work that we've done. You know, my sophomore year is the year that they changed the student programming fees. So the state legislature got deeply involved in the way that the $20 fee that every UT undergrad pays gets distributed, and set up this whole process of opting in and opting out as an attempt to curb the ability of us to get funding, because at that point, that was where we were getting the vast majority of our funding was from student programming fees. At least at this point, every UT undergrad pays a $20 fee each semester that goes into a big pool of money called the Student Programming Allocations Fee. And so any registered student organization is eligible to apply for funding from that to bring events or host workshops or that kind of thing. After they failed to end Sex Week the first year, and after they failed to end it when they condemned us, the state legislature stepped in and passed a law that student programming allocations fees, students had to opt into those fees going into the pool of money that would be eligible for funding. So regardless, every student still has to pay the $20 a semester. But if you do not opt into that fee going into this big pool of money, honestly, we're not quite sure where it goes. They tell us it goes to miscellaneous things on campus, and I'm sure it does. It's about 82% of undergrads now that opt into the student programming allocations fee, and it's about 90% of full-time students. I think the administration realizes at this point that we are here to stay. And I also think the administration has seen that the work we are doing on campus is having a positive effect on campus. We are the reason that a number of sexual assault prevention initiatives are in place. We are the reason that there's an affirmative consent policy in our new sexual misconduct policy, because one of our former co-chairs was really pivotal in writing that. So I think as they're seeing that the work that we do is sincerely improving student lives, it's not so much an antagonism towards us, but they have to deal with so much crap from the state legislature as a result of us and other seemingly controversial initiatives on campus. So I by no means would say that they're supportive, but it's certainly not the level of antagonism that I understand it was when Brianna and Jacob first started Sex Week. We receive, again, not support per se, but at this point it's more the administration is just trying to help us deal with the headaches that come up as they come up. But we also have widespread faculty support. I'd say that of the, again, 30 to 40 events that we do every Sex Week, probably 20 of them are run by or solely through faculty on campus. I tweeted this thing kind of jokingly, but it got a lot of pickup a few months ago that, like, I wish the Tennessee State Legislature knew how many lives Sex Week at UT saves, because Sex Week does save student lives. Faculty, because they care about students, want to be supportive of initiatives that do that kind of thing. Students are really in, like, a unique position to express their free speech rights and push things forward, even seemingly radical things. I don't like thinking of the university as a customer business model, but in the sense that it increasingly is, we are the customers of the University of Tennessee, and so if there are things that we are not happy about, if we raise enough hell over those things, that's how real change happens. And so Jacob and Brianna, when they started SEAT, identified a lot of problems that they wanted to fix. They did something about it, and that has resulted in massive institutional change. You see that from any number of marginalized groups on campus, but even, things like wanting more undergraduate research. So I think the intersection of student wants and needs and the ability of students to more freely express their free speech, because we're not paid by the administration. I mean, we're paying to be here, and we are not faculty members or staff people who have their employer regulations that they have to fit their free speech within. Especially being university students, even today, is a privilege that a lot of people in our country don't have. So I think recognizing that privilege and recognizing that we have a unique level of ability to express ourselves and our wants, making sure that we are using that for the better good of campus and the community on the whole.
You mentioned earlier that SEAT was sort of lumped in with the Office of Diversity in this recent fiasco from last December. Could you talk about that a bit?
So we aren't sure if that's the state misunderstanding Sex Week, or they just thought it'd be killing a couple of birds with one stone. When the state decided to defund the Office for Diversity and Inclusion, which I guess was a decision they made in January. They did it in March of 2016, or May of 2016. There were several bills that went through, and some of them were silly things like "In God We Trust" stickers on police cars, but the bill that finally passed included, in addition to defunding the Office for Diversity and Inclusion, it prohibited university funding or support, depending on which clause, it uses different language, to gender-neutral pronouns, religious holidays, and Sex Week. Actually, when they rewrote the bill so that both the Senate and the House would vote on it, they changed it from prohibiting university funding of Sex Week to support of Sex Week. And from what we understand, legislators are taking that to mean support in all forms, including use of campus facilities. So that's our next interesting battle. They, for some reason, lump in our programming with diversity and inclusion on the whole. We do firmly believe we're making campus a safer and better place for students, especially with marginalized identities. But the work we do has never in any way been even funded by, let alone under the umbrella of, the former Office for Diversity and Inclusion. We've received zero guidance from the administration or the state as to what the bill actually means for our organization right now, but we are just moving forward with plans for Sex Week 2017 in the hopes that the bill, like many other bills that have been passed in this state and others, will have no tangible ramifications for us. So we saw several legislators tweeting about how, we've ended Sex Week. One particular legislator who sponsored one of the bills said that it would prohibit us from using campus facilities. So at this point, we have only reserved one room for Sex Week itself and received no pushback, but we are bracing ourselves to be told that we are not allowed to host Sex Week on campus next year. In the past, we have had so many unexpected barriers thrown our way that we're flexible as an organization and again have great faculty support to back us up on everything. So we're ready for whatever the bill means for us.
The legislature's statement that they would prohibit you on the basis of using university facilities, that seems like a very sweeping precedent. That's their basis for this. Could they not begin saying what can and cannot be taught in the classroom?
Right. Well, and that was one of the concerns with the bill, particularly as it related to gender-neutral pronouns. One of the earlier bills would have prohibited non-diversity and sustainability employees from talking about diversity and sustainability, which at that point we interpreted as anybody who was not employed by the Office for Sustainability or the Office for Diversity could not talk about those subjects. And that would be prohibiting biosystems engineering professors from talking about sustainability or sociology professors from talking about critical race theory. So it's by no means, it has been a fear increasingly in the last year that these measures that the state has been passing will start leaning over into academic freedom rights. Someone made the joke the other day, and I was worried when they did, that the next step by the state might be to ban student organizations because they can't expressly prohibit our one student organization from doing things on campus. But if they got rid of all student organizations, they would get rid of sexual empowerment and awareness at Tennessee and every other student organization on campus, and we would be unable to get probably the amount of funding we would need to host the caliber of Sex Week that we always do. I think you see increasingly conservative state legislatures starting to get into micromanaging universities. What happened with the University of North Carolina system with Margaret Spellings, Wisconsin, just a number of times where the state legislature, whether it's restructuring the mechanisms that choose chancellors at universities, which now that Chancellor Cheek is retiring, we're certainly, I would say, wary about here, but state legislatures intervening in the actual structuring of university administrations, which UT is great proof that an administration can make or break what happens on campus. There have been increasing measures from that, and then just a lot of pushback from what a lot of people see are radical college students wanting safe spaces and all of these cushy liberal college things that they apparently think that we all have. But I think you see increasingly calls from conservative people, often many of whom have never been to college themselves, and from conservative state legislatures, trying to prohibit student movements from springing up and making campuses more progressive places, which to me, that is making campuses safer and healthier and more inclusive to people who have historically been denied access to higher education. Our position is a very large institution in a very conservative state. Honestly, the state of Tennessee and to a large extent the University of Tennessee administration are making such a fool out of our campus that anytime I think we or any other student group faces pushback from one of those bodies, at this point the media just takes it as another opportunity to point out how ridiculous Tennessee is being. When you see that in the same year the Office for Diversity and Inclusion has been defunded, open carry has occurred on campus, the collection of ridiculous stories coming out of the University of Tennessee has kind of snowballed into an effect of any organization that gets targeted by these ridiculous measures, I think gets a little bit of street cred.
It seems that a lot of the hostility directed at SEAT comes from individuals or groups who don't fully understand what you guys do.
Having earnest conversations about, yes, like we're having this seemingly provocative event, but here's how it's actually going to make a difference in the health and safety of students on campus, has certainly, I think, seen a lot of movement with people who were initially uncertain about what we do. When it comes to the state legislature, I'd like to believe most of the state legislature is not opposed to Tennessee students getting sex education, to our organization promoting sexual assault prevention initiatives. Nobody wants students getting life-threatening STIs or being sexually assaulted on campus. But I do think Sex Week at this point has just become an issue that a lot of politicians in the state mobilize around come elections, which again I think is why the diversity initiatives in the past year got taken off so poorly, because 2016 is a very contentious election season, both nationally and locally. So I think when it comes to dealing with people at the state level who disagree with what we do, I mean, we receive our fair share of nasty Facebook messages and threatening emails, and we just discard them. Our goal as an organization is to make the lives of students better, and students and increasingly faculty and administration see that we're doing that. So XYZ random Tennessean living in Morristown who thinks we're all going to hell, that's not a conversation that we're willing to take time to engage in. Once you open up conversations about why we have risque titles to our events and why we do events about BDSM on a college campus, it can open themselves up to seeing how that's meaningful in creating a safer campus. Those are more the people that we try to engage with, and they're very receptive generally. I would say overwhelmingly the student body is supportive of Sex Week. We have a lot of support from a lot of the campus ministries who regularly participate in our events that address religion and sexuality and the intersections of them. We have never actually received significant pushback from the student body. And again, I think as Sex Week has gone on longer and as students have seen the tangible measures that we have made happen on campus and have attended events and seen that, like, an event might be titled Butt Stuff, but it's actually like an educational, really useful event for students to attend. Most students, even if they're not super on board with Sex Week, just ignore us. We're another campus organization that stands out there handing them things they don't want when they're walking to class. But really, we are the largest student organization attended event on campus. We receive over 4,000 attendees, individual attendees every year. We receive enough support that we certainly keep going in the direction we're going. At the heart of what we do is the belief that we are preventing sexual assault and relationship violence through sex-positive education. Because in my opinion, and in the opinions of most sexologists, psychologists, development experts, you cannot have conversations about a difficult subject like sexual assault if you can't talk about sex in the first place. And you can't know what a bad encounter looks like without knowing what a good consensual encounter is supposed to be. So our thing is we engage students in conversations that can be uncomfortable, they can be hard. So we're trying to give students the skills to be able to communicate with their partners. Again, those are skills that are not exclusively tailored to relationships or sexual encounters, but communication skills are necessary in all facets of life. We just see having seemingly silly, fun events about international aphrodisiacs. They still bring in students to engage in conversations that they otherwise don't have the opportunity to, and that's what we see our role being, is first and foremost preventing violence and creating a healthier and safer campus. Since I started at UT, I have realized how important freedom of speech is, and it's funny because there have been, a number of Martin Daniel himself who has been an active opponent of Sex Week at UT and a number of other progressive ideas here at UT, tried to pass a bill about free speech on campus because he was afraid that conservative voices on campus weren't having their free speech expressions valued, which is super funny to me. And I think it's super funny even to conservative students on campus, the idea that conservative ideas are not welcome around here. Freedom of speech, when you become a student at a university, is contentious and now under fire as the University of Tennessee. I've come to see far more value in it as a concept and as something that you need to actively struggle to have recognized than I could have imagined coming in as a very reserved college freshman. All of our rights are a constant struggle. They're things we need to be fighting for, and in this day and age, it's a shame, really, that we're having to do that, but hopefully 50 years down the road, these particular types of freedom of speech battles won't be something that the University of Tennessee campus members are having to deal with.